Hi there, I'm Catherine, the Ottawa Citizen's federal public service reporter, and I'm here today with Nancy Peckford, the mayor of North Grenville. Thank you so much for being here.
Not a problem.
So, obviously, there has been a lot of talk this week about public servants going back to the office and 3 days a week, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, knowing that you've expressed concerns about it in the past.
Well, certainly as mayor of North Grenville, which is a high growth urban rural municipality south of Ottawa, we house a lot of public service employees, both federal and provincial, in fact, but certainly a large proportion of those public service employees are federal. And, the minute the directive came out for 3 days a week back in the office, if you will, I began to hear from a lot of different public service employees, not just in our community, actually, but all over, including residents from Ottawa South, from the south of Ottawa, who were extremely concerned about the impact to their daily lives, but more importantly, to their local economies, where they've had more of an opportunity to support them with a hybrid work arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any idea over the past few years, how businesses have been doing with public servants back at home and, how that's likely going to change now?
Well, certainly what we saw during the pandemic really quickly was that, of course, people were forced to support local. As things started to open up, they were obviously loath to go further afield. And we heard reports right away of like someone discovering their local hardware store or deciding to visit a local accountant versus one maybe that had been in a city, which was nearer to their workplace. So from a professional services standpoint, from a health services standpoint, from just picking up groceries or gas, we understood that people were supporting their local economies in a way that they didn't really have the same opportunity when they were in the office, if you will, in downtown Ottawa or Hull or Gatineau 5 days a week.
Do you expect that your local businesses are going to take a big hit from people going back downtown more often?
I think the clientele may change, obviously, and we've heard that already from some local businesses. Fortunately, we are a high growth community, so we see lots of people come into the community, but I think some of those relationships naturally are going to change, and that's really unfortunate because we believe that the federal public service and the Treasury Board has a responsibility to take a balanced approach and really look at the realities that as a national, as a federal employer, they have a responsibility to all of the economies where their public service employees work, not just one. And we've really urged the Treasury Board to consider establishing a remote co-working space, if you will, like they've done in other parts of the city of Ottawa at the former site of the Kemptville College. It's a 626-acre property, 18 buildings. It's being well utilized now, but there's lots of space to grow a hub at that particular location.
And do you have any, other suggestions for what you think might better help, communities outside of downtown Ottawa?
Well, I think again that balance between hybrid. Of course, there are times, of course, when people need to be in the office, but increasingly, what I hear from public service employees is a lot of their colleagues are not based in one city, one community. They go into a federal public service office and they're on a Teams meeting all day with colleagues from across the country. So, practically speaking, we're not convinced that there is, in fact, the productivity gains that some may argue there would be. But again, we do believe very strongly that we have a very suitable location for a remote offsite location, which would allow people to come together, be on site in a sanctioned Government of Canada location, but also save people up to 3 hours of commuting a day, which quite frankly cuts into their off time, their non-paid time with their families and in their communities. We noted certainly in the last couple of years, we've seen more people able to volunteer at the rink for their kids' hockey team or what have you. We've seen higher rates of volunteerism at our food bank, at some of our local charities and service groups. And I do fear that there will be impacts, not because people are working more in a downtown office building, but it's the commuting time in particular that I believe is really going to cut in to their capacity to give back to the communities where they reside.
And have you gotten, any response at all to your request for this co-working space?
Certainly the Treasury Board has acknowledged our communication, and I think they're very aware that this is something that we're championing. Of course, as you may know, I joined forces with 5 other mayors this past May, and we submitted a letter to the Treasury Board to really outline systematically some of the other concerns that we have in regards to the impact to sending, the vast majority of public service employees back to, downtown Ottawa or Gatineau locations, 3, 4, 5 days a week in some cases. So we are very eager to be at the table with the Treasury Board so we can highlight some alternatives that we think are a win-win, not just for us, but for the overall productivity and well-being of the public service. And we know we're in an age where retention and recruitment are massive challenges. And I do fear that we will see some of the federal public service employees who've been fairly, I think, well employed, look for other options just because the new directive may not be tenable for them.
And do you have any idea, how many public servants are living in your area? How many people are already being affected by this change in policy?
Right. We know that the census data tells us it's thousands of employees are employed by the public sector. So when you break that down, of course, that's not all federal. It's many different sectors, but certainly in our region, there are thousands of public service employees who are being negatively impacted by the Back to Work directive in the way that it's been currently defined. So, I'm a hockey mom, I'm a soccer mom, I'm out in the community a lot, and I hear about some of the negative implications quite regularly. And people ask me about whether or not establishing that hub at Kemptville campus is something that's going to certainly take flight. And I continue to say that we're very open to dialogue with the Treasury Board at their convenience, and we'll continue to certainly showcase why we think it's such a suitable location.
Absolutely. And I guess I'm also wondering, do you know at all how many people might have moved to your area during the pandemic, or do you have any concerns about people maybe moving back downtown now that they need to be there more often?
I do. We saw tremendous growth during the pandemic. We're looking at a projected growth rate in the next 5 years between 16 and 25%. Hundreds and hundreds of people obviously moved into our community, and that's just accelerated since the pandemic. So we're, a community of nearly 20,000 people, both in the private and public sectors. We certainly saw that the flexibility that they were accorded allowed them to maybe move a little further afield and locate in some rural urban communities outside of the city borders. And of course, we would be very sad to see those new families, midlife professionals have to relocate on the basis of this new directive.